So again, welcome. This is the informational webinar for the Accelerating Climate Resilience Municipal Grant. And today we'll provide some program overview and talk specifically about the invitation for proposals that just went out last week. Before we start, my name is Van. I'm Senior Environmental Planner here at MAPC, and I'm also the manager of this program. I would like now to also welcome my core team members. I'll ask Adria and Francelis to introduce themselves as well. Start with Adria.
Hi everyone, my name is Adria Boynton. I'm a Senior Environmental Planner and Resiliency Specialist with MAPC.
Thank you. And Francelis.
Hi everyone, good morning. I'm Francelis and I'm a Clean Energy and Climate Fellow with the Clean Energy team at MAPC.
Great. And our other member is Julie Curti. She's the Interim Director of Clean Energy. Unfortunately, she can't be here this morning, but she's also full of knowledge and answers if you need to reach out. All right, so for today's agenda, in the first part of this presentation, I will go over the Accelerating Climate Resilience Program, overview and priorities, details on this year, the FY23 invitation for proposals and application form. We'll leave a couple minutes for question and answers about just the logistics and the application process and things like that. And then for the second half of the presentation, I will go over some available resources, share some project examples that have been funded in the past and project ideas. And just some tips and lessons learned that we gather from previous funding rounds to help strengthen your application. We'll again have another session for a Q&A. We'll aim to get you out of here by 11:30, but my team and I will hang out a little bit until noon for anyone who have specific questions or would like to discuss further about the ACR program. All right, so with that, just want to share with you a kind of a summary of the Accelerating Climate Resilience Program. Also, you've probably heard me say a lot, the ACR program. It's generously funded by the Bar Foundation and it is now in its 4th year. The program is designed to support municipalities with implementing smaller, kind of a mid-sized climate resilience projects that will also lead to long-term changes and readiness for climate change impacts. And through these climate projects, MAPC hopes that we can advance equity, regional coordination, and social cohesion. Here are the 9 priorities of the ACR program. And many of you have applied and have received funding in the past, as seen in the attendance list here. But overall, again, we are looking for projects that that address at least one of the following priority areas. So nature-based solutions for climate resilience, such as green infrastructure implementation, examples such as climate smart parks, urban forestry, floodplain protection, restoring natural systems in your communities. We're also looking at municipal climate resilience policy, such as that's including regulations, zoning, permitting, inspectional services, you name it. We also look at innovative financing or infrastructure investment models that are scalable and replicable, capacity building through municipal staffing, climate coalitions convening, such as stormwater partnerships, regional climate networks, watershed-based climate resilience initiatives, and then contributions to social resilience or cohesion, such as public space improvement, creating dialogues, gatherings, training programs, public health improvements, and with particularly focus on populations or neighborhoods that are vulnerable to climate change. We're also looking at projects that combine climate adaptation and mitigation efforts together, finding the synergies there. Also exploring a local food system or community agricultural resilience measure, community farms, pollinated gardens, for example, strategic, well, that's more of the green infrastructure, I guess, but strategic tree planting or some projects we funded in the past, district scale climate resilience pilots, and of course, public outreach, engagement, and educational efforts, including artistic, cultural, creative projects that really help advance the knowledge or actions on climate change in your community. And then as part of the ACR program, grantees also become part of the resilience community of practice. It's now in its second and a half year. And it's a network for peer-to-peer learning. Grantees or participants get to work together, and in these conversations, we talk and think about the different barriers and opportunities to how to advance climate resilience efforts in communities. In each community will have, this is the formal and informal space, so there's training, but then there's also time for kind of group conversation, especially difficult conversations around resilience, and kind of brainstorm together, potential solutions or things that we can pilot. And in the past, we have successfully hosted in-person site visits of implementation projects that receive funding as well. We've done hybrid mode. We've gone kayaking out to a floating wetland. We visit, a site by a river that is going to be redeveloped, but we also talk kind of about the different innovative, creative engagement processes that these projects have tried or piloted as well. You also get to pair up with another buddies just to have like that one-on-one, and that rotates, and so you can get to know each other, at a more thoughtful level where you can kind of have that one-on-one conversation as well. And there's different ways that will make sure that you connect to one another based on the similarity of your projects, or just kind of ideas or discussion topics that you're interested in. And last but not least, part of the ACR program is also putting together a speaker series. And this is open to everyone in the public. And in the past, we've invited experts and practitioners from across the country, actually internationally as well. For one of the session, we actually invited an artist from Australia to come and talk to us about the role of arts in creating a community space and connecting that to climate resilience. So that was really fun. All right, so I think this is what everyone is mostly anticipating. The FY23 invitation for proposal, it is now out. You can visit the program webpage to download the application form, review the full invitations for proposals that walk through again the program priorities, providing additional information on the timeline. There are the application form is within that as well under Appendix A. And then Appendix B is for construction or capital improvement projects specifically. And then Appendix C, you'll also see we create a matrix, and that's kind of some examples of different project ideas that we're encouraging folks to think about. So there are two types of funding available for this grant round. 1 year grant for project and we'll fund up to $50,000 per project for 1 year grant. And we're also again offering 2 year grants, and that is up to $125,000 per project. Eligible type of projects include technical assistant or design. So think about designing or developing climate zoning improvements, recommendations, etc. Capital projects like flood proofing infrastructure, again, climate smart parks, think about green infrastructure, nature-based solutions, incorporation to your project. And then capacity building initiatives, again, we're looking to see a climate resilience network, a coalition, as well as supporting existing groups, priority initiatives that you have identified. Again, there's a link here, but I think Marceli's also dropped the link into the chat as well. You can check out all of these details. And if you scroll out to the bottom, you'll see also lists of previously funded projects for ideas as well. All right, and just a quick overview of the timeline here. Sorry, it's a little blurry, but we had held about 3 weeks worth of office hours and got to talk to a lot of communities and their great project ideas. So I hope many of you are putting that into applications as well. So the invitation for proposal opened September 14 last week. And the deadline for the applications is October 14. And then we will we'll form a technical review team that will review and evaluate the project, all the received submission. And we're hoping to make we're hoping to make announcement of final selection by early November. And then we'll take the rest of the year to finalize the scope, get the contract with MAPC and the municipalities in place, and all projects will start in January of 2023. So for 1 year project, you'll have till December 31st of 2023 to complete. And for 2 years, you have till December 31st of 2024. For 1 year project, you'll have a mid-year progress report due in June 30th of 2023. For 2 years project, you'll have two mid-progress report, one in September and one in June, September of 2023 and June of 2024. And again, all projects are complete within your time frame, either December 31st of 23 or of 2024. And just a quick snapshot of the criteria that our technical review team will use to evaluate the proposal. Our technical review team will be made up of MAPC staff representing different departments, clean energy, environment, of course, land use, transportation, public health, arts and culture. It really depends also on the project types or the projects that will come in when we receive them. And, we will make sure to have an expert or have someone with expertise accordingly to make sure that the evaluation process is thoughtful and comprehensive, and we can support you that way. And in the past, preference was given to projects that demonstrate communities that will be affected by projects that have leadership role in decision-making and or implementation, projects that build social cohesion and connections between or within community members through community-based asset, dialogues, networks. So really think through the activities that you will propose for that community engagement piece where it makes sense. And of course, projects that advance regional or multi-jurisdictional collaboration. And just knowing MAPC, you probably guess why that is a preference. And then, so just in terms of the planning process, so the ACR core team, which is me, Francelis, Adria, and Julie, will be here to support you. If you have any questions about logistics and submissions of the grant application between now and October 14, and then again, the technical review team will do the evaluation review and provide final recommendations to our leadership team, who will make the final selection of the grant award for this round. Okay, so I talk a little bit too much, so I just want to pause for a second here to see if you have any questions about just specifically about the grant applications and logistics and things like that. I'll stop sharing for a moment. Adria, if there's anything in the chat that we should pay attention to.
Yeah, absolutely. We have received one question about project eligibility that maybe we can hold until the next Q&A, but I might call out two questions in the chat about process. And then I see Claudia has her hand raised. So the first question in the chat about process is, are you limited to only one application, or can you apply for multiple projects?
No, you can apply for as many projects as you would like, knowing the application form. So kudos if you have the capacity. We welcome as many projects from a community as possible.
Wonderful. And the second question in the chat about process is, where can I view the full RFP?
It is so the application forms, the invitation for proposals, which will have all the information and resources on there, as well as the application form, is located on the website, which is, can you remind me? It's our Accelerating Climate Resiliency webpage. So Francelis, if you don't mind, redrop that in the chat again. You'll also see that we try to break it out and make it easier for you. If you just want to download the application form, there should be an option for you to do that as well. But the application form is also Appendix A of the invitation for proposal. It's the same.
Wonderful. And I see Francelis popped the link in the chat, so thank you for that. For the folks who submitted 2 questions about project eligibility, we will get to that at the end. I don't want to lose track of it. Maybe we can hand it over to Claudia, who has her hand raised.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Can you clarify in the application you're requesting a letter from the Chief Executive Officer? What are you expecting for that?
Yeah, that really is just a letter of support, or that your decision maker is. So it could be a town administrator, town manager, or director of department, or someone who can just acknowledge that they're aware of this project and that there's supporting it. It doesn't have to be like a chapter, just that we know, that if a staff is submitting and to be project manager, that's totally fine. But that we also looking for sort of the leadership approval as well.
So, sorry, just to further clarify, so would it, in this case for Cambridge, would it be the city manager? Is that what you're expecting?
That's fine. Yeah.
Or a director approval?
I'm gonna leave it. It's fine if it's a director approval, but if you can also, we encourage you to let the city manager know too that you're applying. So it's fine as long as someone who has the authoritative kind of level to sign off on things.
Thank you.
If we have time for a couple more process questions, Van, there's a question here from Christina. In addition to municipalities, are nonprofits and grassroots coalitions eligible to apply? And if so, are there stipulations? For example, do they need to have a signed MOU with the city?
Yeah, so the municipality needs to serve as the lead applicant, but we encourage, we really strongly encourage the partnering with community groups, advocacy groups, and things like that. But currently, the municipality is the only eligible applicant, and whether you are, signed a subcontract or an MOU, that's up to the agreement between you and or the organizations and the municipality, and really because this is a municipal grant, so that's why the municipality needs to be the lead applicant. But in the past, municipality who received the award have worked closely and even really lean on the community groups or advocacy groups to help execute the project as well. So it's fine.
Fantastic. And the only other question I see here about process, and you may have addressed it in your response to Claudia, but if there's anything else to clarify around the definition in the application of staff project manager and chief executive officer. There was a second question about that.
Yeah, so staff manager, project manager is really someone who will be executing, implementing the project, overseeing and making sure that, you're meeting the deliverables. You'll be the point contact with MAPC in terms of submitting progress report, final report, all the coordination. You'll be participating in the Resilience Community of Practice Forum, kind of the point person, point of contact for the project moving forward if selected. And the approval of the chief really is just again, someone who is kind of that has the authority to sign off on like your reimbursement request, that can sign off on like, yes, they're aware of this project and they know, and also it just, would be nice to, or not nice, but it's nice to have that leadership buy-in, obviously, that we want to make sure they're aware of the project as well.
And since we have a little more time here, there's a question about sort of who is eligible to apply. So there's a question, is a town library eligible to be a lead applicant?
Sorry, can you repeat that? Can
a town library, would a town library be eligible to be a lead applicant for this grant program?
Is the town library a department of, or part of the municipal department, or part of the municipal operations? I know some that may vary, but yeah, that's something I can look more into the previous grant round funding and also talk internally as well.
Okay, so that might be some follow-up from us. And then a process question here, can there be 2 joint points of contact or 2 project managers?
Yeah, so on the application form, I believe you should be able to see that the municipal staff point of contact or project manager, and then right after that, there should be a section that lead community partners as well. And in the past, we have, like I mentioned, for example, one of the project is in Arlington, right? And that was led by the Department of Planning and Community Development for the town of Arlington, in co-partnering with I'm gonna say that completely wrong, but I believe it's the commission's Arts and Culture Commissions. And so, but it's the commission's point of contact play the big role in the coordinating and implementing the project in communications with the town. And that was fine as well. And both of them joined the resilience community practice as well. As long as we have kind of that, and so that's what I mean, but it's okay. You had to get your municipality on board to be the lead applicant, as long as you can make sure there's communications, they're aware of the project and not just like, okay, nope, you just go for it. But the community partners can play the lead role in the implementation of the project as well, if that's your project idea, right?
And another question came in while you were talking through that, Van, so I think you've addressed it, but maybe just to confirm we've addressed it fully. Do staff manager and chief executive officer roles need to be both municipal, or can one or both be from partnering nonprofits?
They both have to be municipal, as the municipal staff manager. And so the staff manager may be also the same as the chief person. Okay.
Fantastic.
All right.
Lots of great questions. That's all I see in the chat and hands raised for now, but we do still have those 2 questions about project eligibility. We have not forgotten. We're holding on to them for the next Q&A session in this webinar.
Sounds good. Thank you, Adria. Okay, so I will kind of share with you, and we'll have more time at the end too for more discussions. So don't worry, and we'll document all of these questions and have a more formal Q&A document. We'll post it to the website on Friday. We'll talk about the logistic of that a little bit more, so don't worry. But in the next few slides, just want to walk through some suggestions of project examples that have, for you to think about, that kind of address the 9 program priorities, that, but also things that we have also funded in the past for you to think about what's appropriate for the 1-year or 2-year projects. And so the first one you see here, can you see my screen? Good. Yeah. So the first one here, typically a 1-year project, thinking through about municipal resilience zoning regulations, financing. How are you thinking through kind of integrating or incorporating as you're updating your regulations, zoning bylaws, things like that, that may be happening or you're thinking about, your community is thinking about. And as a resource, we, MAPC, have put together some regulatory language and policy examples too. You can kind of see some of the topics here for the climate resilience land use strategies. So Francelis will drop a link to that resource for you, just to comb through their example of cities and towns in our region that have done, that may have been doing some similar things like that for you to think that may be an appropriate project ideas for you. And of course, the environments team can provide you with more information and guidance on that as well. Another 1 year type is coalitions and convenings. So again, we can help see the formation, development of coalitions of regional groups. There are many existing one in the region already. Right on top of my head, I could think of is the Neponset Stormwater Coalition. There's the South Shore Climate Coalition as well. One that we funded last year was the Suasco Climate Resilience Coalition. And so, part of that is they convened the cities and towns together. The lead application was the town of Stowe, and they worked together with a consultant firm, ORS, to form this coalition, convene everyone, provide some training on how to do equitable community engagement, but they also discuss kind of what are the priorities for the coalition, for the region, moving forward, that we can apply for grant funding. And I believe one of the successes come out of this coalition forming is that they were able to secure grant for the next few years to move forward with some of the priority projects that identify together as a group. Another 1 year grant type is kind of more appropriate for the improvements to social resiliency and cohesion. So one of our projects that we funded last year or 2 years before was creating these resilience hubs in the city of Medford. This was kind of a complementary funding for the larger MVP action grant as well. So that's another thing, is that we strongly encourage you to think through kind of other local, state, federal match that you might want to help, leveraging our grant to help supplement that or complement, or, there might be a component that you can use our grants to dive deeper. In the past, it was on community engagement and really, designing focus groups, dive a little bit deeper into getting more out of the different community members or groups that you have in your community. And then another 1 year grant type is, again, we really love to, if you can explore the synergies between climate adaptation and mitigation or other co-benefits. District scale pilots, thinking through the technical designs, of doing something at the larger scale that can be scalable or replicable in your community or in the region. Another 1 year type that we've funded in the past is kind of exploring local food systems, thinking through programs that support technical advances for local farmers, especially in the year past, thinking through the impact of COVID-19 or the pandemic, right? Thinking about programs for distributing local foods to food banks, shelters. The picture on the left here is from our site visits to the Food Forest Coalition or Food Forest in Dorchester that we funded. And this is such a neat project that they also, turn a vacant lot in a Dorchester neighborhood and use this site both as an educational component, but also a way to engage in providing a space for neighborhood members to come together, think about what they want to grow and plant and improve for their community as well. And then on the outreach, marketing, arts, and culture projects, really, I think this is such a helpful and neat and creative way to really emphasize on, again, that outreach component, doing engagement, thinking about community members that, you know, how to reach different community members that you have not before, right? Think about the climate education on extreme heat impact, on flooding, on different hazard or climate impacts that identify in your communities. Arlington, again, was a project that we funded last year, and they provided or they worked with the high school students who create these mile markers to think about the different kind of looking forward to, like, you know, thinking through, you know, what are they committing to, what are the goals, or what are the efforts to combat the climate impacts identified in their communities with some of the ideas that they have. And then for 2 years projects, so you kind of get a sense that for 2-year project where the preference is to capital improvement and construction project. And again, we strongly encourage, you know, thinking through that about that nature-based solutions in the construction projects that you are thinking about or identify. Some of the projects here we funded in the past is, again, supporting the creation of and maintenance of the floating wetland in Cambridge. If you have, you know, kind of some infrastructure improvement project, thinking how you can improve stormwater systems in your communities. Is there a way to strategically plant trees in places that are known as hotspot or that are known for the urban heat island effects in your community? So some of the things like that to keep in mind. And of course, again, in the invitation for proposal, you can look at Appendix C. We try to kind of put together here some of the project ideas, including those that we have previously funded as well. And we kind of group them by what would that mean to do, say, a nature-based solution or a zoning regulation improvement as a technical assistant type project type, as a capital project type, and as a capacity building project type. And then just quickly wants to go through some tools and resources to help you. This also listed in the invitation for proposals as well, but here are some tools and resources available on MAPC website for your consideration as you put your application together. First of all, many of you have completed the MVP planning program. By you, I mean your municipalities. So you're familiar with the process of assessing exposure, sensitivity, thinking about the adaptive capacity of the communities in specific areas or neighborhoods as well. So be sure to reference the findings in these MVP reports or your hazard mitigation plans or any of, you know, the recent climate planning effort. MAPC has also constructed a regional climate vulnerability index and mapping tools here to support you. It shows which communities are vulnerable to specific climate hazards, how some may be more vulnerable to others. This mapping tool combines social demographics, public health, housing, workforce data with climate exposure data. So you can kind of go through, and here's just a snapshot here, but there's the link to it. You can type in your communities and zoom in, and it will give you a little bit more detail. This can be used to help identify, you know, the populations or the groups or areas that should be centered in your climate preparedness and resiliency work. Not just for this application, but I think that's just overall a good resource for you to have in your planning effort community-wide. And I just want to note here, this is not a required. There will be questions on the application that will ask you to share kind of that information, like what is your understanding of the community's vulnerabilities, the specific neighborhoods, areas, or priority populations and things like that. But like I said, feel free to draw from the MVP report findings, planning findings that you have done if they're recently, and or use this tool. And of course, if you have even more localized data that you have done recently, feel free to draw to them. You know your community best. So these are just some suggestions for you to kind of explore that further. And of course, the impacts of climate change are not equally distributed. So think about the engagement activities that you want to propose for your project. You can check out MAPC engagement resources, many of which, kind of some example here, they're developed, some of them developed in response to additional needs compounded by COVID-19, things like that. So just give you some ideas and kind of considerations as you kind of design your engagement activities. And of course, you can reach out to our engagement team, to talk through for support and things like that. And then another really great resource is our clean energy team that put together for the municipal net zero playbook is this framework for equity. And this is it's really great for climate planning and implementation project because it details how climate intersects with different existing inequity within the communities. Just kind of really pose the questions and considerations for you to think through as you think about centering equities in your project. And then lastly, just some tips and recommendations that we have kind of gathered and learned from our previous funding round and in talking with our funded projects as well. So one, regional collaborations, MAPC loves to see that. We want to make sure you streamline, leveraging, share resources. Again, the intent of this program is really to make sure that these projects are implementable, but also replicable and scalable. And so, and if you start with that, the synergy, to really have that jurisdictional collaboration. They don't have to be geographically adjacent either. Like, if that's something that you can learn from different area within the region, we would love to see that. So think big and bold and be innovative about it. Again, connect your projects with the municipal planning efforts. So we don't want you to start from scratch or do something in tandem. Leverage what you have done. For example, if there have been priority strategies or actions that identify in the recent planning efforts, reference that, call to it, and how are you, building this projects to make sure that you can address or get to that completion of that priority actions that have been identified by the community, for example. Not required, but project readiness and capacity are important. So think through kind of, what's the process and what looks like, and really is where we want to make sure that we can be as flexible as possible with this project or this program, but make sure that you are realistic, especially now that we've gone through the pandemic or is still going through the pandemic, and understand the different curveballs that have been thrown at us. So really think through the feasibility as well of like realistically how much and what can you accomplish in a 1-year project or a 2-year project. And then community support can make or break the project, obviously. We want to make sure that you have the right partners, you're talking to the right folks, you have the community buy-ins to make sure that this project is successful. Prioritize climate equity, again, is key and something that in the past, I know the technical review team really pay attention to. And last but not least, be very clear of your proposed deliverables. Make sure you really understand and state to us, what are you asking for, so that, we can really, we're not making any assumption about your projects in that sense. Okay, well, that gone through a little quicker than I anticipated, but I know there's a lot of questions, I'm sure. So, so for the last 15 minutes of this call, let's just have questions and discussions.
And I might get us started with a couple of questions from the chat, starting with the project eligibility questions that were posted earlier. So the first one is, are community or school composting programs eligible for this grant?
Yes, we would consider that. Yeah.
Fantastic. And then another question about project eligibility. Can these grants be used to assist a town for consultancy in developing a climate action plan?
I would need to see the detail of your proposal, specifically what is, how is this grant, supporting that climate action planning projects or efforts that your community is thinking about. And I would say there are other funding sources too available, right, for you to consider with that. And so, yeah, we would love to. Yeah, so the answer is yes. It's worth putting in the proposal, but I think it's eligible, but we would love to see kind of like what exactly is the detail, right? That how is this grant supplementing or complementing it?
Great. And Hank, that question was from Hank. So Hank, if there are more details you'd like to post in the chat, and maybe we could keep talking through it. But another question here is, for an example, like the municipal resilience zoning, would the money be used to hire a staff person to focus on these issues, or would the funding have to be used for a consultant? Temporary staff time is a lot more cost effective.
Yeah, as staffing or as consultant services, like however is best for your community, it's eligible. I would say we have funded a staffing position in the past as well, but of course, we want to make sure that that staff, that position is not just going to be or is not depending on grant funding that is not secure long term. So we would love to see, if we see the money, so for you to offer this position, would love to know how it's going to be long-term secure, right? So that's an option, but it sounds like this is also a project specific, right, as well. So in that sense, yes, if it's eligible, we have funded to a community to seek consultant services to look at climate zoning regulations in the past. I don't see how it's different from a staff position as well.
That's really helpful. And then we have two questions about next steps and sort of looking forward. So one question is, will the PowerPoint slide deck that you presented be available after the webinar? Yes, the PowerPoint presentation will be available. We'll follow up in an email in the next couple of days. I want to be realistic, with a recorded video of this, as well as the slide deck as well for you to review. Wonderful. And another question about looking forward. Do you anticipate similar rounds of grant funding for 2023 and 2024? Yes. So there will be another grant round funding for FY24. So I think this is helpful. This is for FY24 grant round next year. They will only be for 1 year project, just because of the nature of the grant programs, deadlines, and things like that. So this, if you have a 2-year grant project in mind, this is the year to apply for, to consider applying for. I know we have talked to some folks that, that might need additional funding beyond just this grant program, this grant fund, but you have yet secure
those grant funding. So that's something for you to consider, is that something you can line up, secure those grant, other grant funding, and consider the FY24 if it's a 1-year project to support that larger project.
Fantastic. Those are all the questions that we've received so far. We still have a little time, so I would definitely encourage folks, if you have other questions on your mind, to post in the chat, raise your hand, come off mute. I will flag that we had another question about if there was a link to view more information about the Cool It With Art project and the Arlington project. So a big thank you to Francelli's for posting links in the chat, and we confirmed that addressed the question. So really great discussion so far.
Any other questions? And I will say that, I know there's a lot of information I throw out at you all today. So check out the invitation proposal, check out the application forms, look at the webpage and previous projects if you would like. And then we will, you can send me questions if Francelli or Adria won't mind, put my email address in the chat. I will accept additional questions until the end of the day tomorrow, Wednesday, September 21st. And then after that, we will compile and put responses to those questions, and we will aim to post that Q&A document to the website by Friday.
And that has sparked a couple follow-up questions, Van, in the chat. We have a follow-up question to the original ask about future rounds of grant funding. So the follow-up question is, so that doesn't mean it has to be secured before this proposal, just applied for or considered. And this question is referring to the other forms of funding.
Would you mind repeating that, or if whoever asked the questions can unmute and kind of repeat or clarify the questions? I think I kind of get it, but if you don't mind.
So hi, I was just kind of saying that when you say that you recommend having other sources of funding, does that mean already having those sources of funding? When you said other state and federal grants, already having those like set in stone, or things that you are already considering applying to or have a proposal in for?
I want to say both. So for example, I'm thinking like if it's a larger project and say this grant will help, a portion of it, you don't want to, I would say it doesn't make sense to like say secure, if selected and have our grant, but then still have the larger chunks that you need have not been secured. So I would say is that you want to pursue and secure if possible, like the other grant funding, like MVP. I'm thinking MVP action grants, bricks, things like that, to have it to have them to pursue and get them, and then come back in 2024 round 4 and then submit for the portion of this grant for that. So the idea is that we would hate to see, so we can be used as matching fund for the larger grants, if that's helpful. And I would hate to see like, you get this funding, but then it's just like a portion of the larger part that that you have yet secure. And so what is the viability of the project?
Okay, thank you. That helps a lot.
Thanks.
Wonderful. And another question about next steps. Is there a grants manager at MAPC that we can call with specific questions? And a big thank you to Francelli's for posting your email in the chat. But anything else that you want to mention related to that?
No, that would be me. And I can answer additional questions related to program logistics. We have done the expression of interest where I provide additional brainstorm sessions during that time for the projects going forward, just to be fair, to everyone. So I will not be able to discuss any more grant projects, project ideas and things like that. But if you have project ideas that, more specific to say like community engagement, you're not sure how to make it, make sense or appropriate, you can talk to the community engagement team. You can talk to other folks in that specific topics, to really help strengthen and to form your application. If you need support thinking that through in that way. But if you have kind of, again, like these logistic questions, like what do I need with my application? What kind of letter support, also not required but encouraged? What does that look like? Who should be on as a lead applicant and things like that, you can reach out to me.
And another question here about project eligibility. Would a town-wide climate fair, like a science fair, be eligible for funding?
I'm going to be, yes, in the sense, because as long as the content and the program of the fair address one or more of the 9 program priorities. So we wouldn't fund like just a science fair, but if there's that specific focus to the climate resilience efforts in the town or for the school, I think it's worth putting a proposal together.
And that takes us to the end of and we have confirmation on that. That is the intention of what you described, Van.
Great. Looking forward to seeing it.
Some great project ideas out there, it sounds like. That takes us to the end of the questions we have received so far.
Great. I know we have gotten questions in the past in terms of if there's a preference for 1-year or 2-year projects. Are they weighed differently, in evaluation? I would say no, as you see in the invitation proposal. And it's also, I'm going to be very vague about this too, because we do have funding for 2-year. Logistically, it makes sense right now for this round to be able to offer that 2-year project timeline. So it really is depending on the project proposal that will be submitted. They will be evaluated all together. And of course, we don't really have a fixed kind of set of how many 2-year projects we're going to fund or how many 1-year projects going to fund. It really is just depending on the strength and the evaluation outcomes of all the submissions that we receive. And just keep in mind that we have to save some fund for the 1-year project in the next round too. All right. Well, if there's no more questions, I will let you out early. Thank you so much to everyone for joining today. Really appreciate you taking the time this morning. If you have questions, again, please email me. If you have questions that between now and tomorrow, you have till end of the day tomorrow, and then we'll post the Q&A document along with this recording and the presentation by Friday. As that's our target. And I'll hang out a little bit if you would like to talk more. But we'll stop recording now. So thank you. Have a good day, everyone. And really looking forward. Hope you all will put in a proposal and really looking forward to seeing the project ideas this year.